Thank you. Okay. All right. Once again, good morning, everyone. We'll be looking at core Azure workload products. And today we'll be having more of ant section. But before then, we'll be looking at the benefits and usage of the core Azure workload, the compute services, the network, the storage. Those are the things we are going to be looking at. So for the compute, we'll be looking at virtual machines, Azure App Service, Azure Container Instance, the Kubernetes, then the WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop. For the networking aspect, we'll be looking at virtual networks, VPN gateway, virtual network pairing, express routes. For storage, we'll be understanding and be looking at, container, the blob storage, disk storage, file storage, the storage tiers, Cosmos DB, for databases, Cosmos DB, SQL database, Azure database for MySQL, Azure database for PostgreSQL, SQL managed instance, and we'll look at the Azure Marketplace where we have all of these resources in place. So here, what are the Azure Compute Services? So when we say Azure Compute Services, is actually the on-demand computer service that's providing network resources such as what we have here on the screen. Okay, so for these compute services, we can see the likes of VMs. Now, these VMs, basically, which we call virtual machines, they are we can say they're synonymous to a physical computer. So what it basically means is it's a physical computer that is hosted in the cloud via for virtualization using the hypervisor. Okay, it also includes memory, storage, network resources. It has its own operating system that is being restored. And how do you make use of it? We make use of it via remote desktop. So we use a remote desktop client, to access the VM. We are going to be doing the labs on that, and we'll be understanding how we can connect to this VM. Now, the VM basically, like I said, they're just like a physical computer where we can have different software installed on it, and we can choose what operating system we want to run on it. That is, we can customize this software or hosting configuration. So with the Azure virtual machines, we can create a computer, or should I say create the virtual machine itself in the cloud. And basically, this virtual machine provides us with EAS, that is infrastructure as a service. When you have a computer in another computer, that virtualization, that's what we refer to as VM. Now let's also look at app service. App service, the next one on the screen. Now this app service is under PaaS, platform as a service. Now for app service, you can quickly build, you can deploy, you can scale, enterprise grade. You can do your mobile app. You can even have your API apps, running on this platform via app service. So it's basically targeted towards, developers. Remember, PaaS, platform as a service, targeted towards developers. Those are the people that utilize it more. So it gives us that platform where we can create workloads for the PaaS services, the platform as a service. We also have container instance. Container instance. Now, the container instance here is also um, synonymous to PaaS service. So these are resources within Azure that we refer to them as lightweight, virtualized application. We can use them to quickly create and scale out, instance. So we can have multiple instances in a container application. We also have the Kubernetes. which I refer to as orchestration. The Azure Kubernetes is more of orchestration. I think as we move on, I will go a deep dive into those. And we also have the WVD, that's the Windows Virtual Desktop. Now you may be wondering, what's the difference between the virtual machine and the virtual desktop? Don't worry, all of these will be seen when we go deep dive in each of them one after the other. The You understand better the what's it called, the WVD in this instance. So let's take it one after the other. All that we have here, we'll be taking them one after the other, and we'll be doing the lab for these things today. Okay, so here we have the Azure virtual machines. They are software emulations of physical computer, just like I initially mentioned. It include virtual processor, memory, storage, network, and it is ES offering. Okay, that's the Azure virtual machine. I think I'd like to bring up my environment to show us. So here we have portal.azure.com. I think I have it opened already. I've logged in already. Okay, this is our dashboard. Now for our virtual machine, okay, I'll just take this moment to explore the environment. So this is the Azure portal, and for you to access the Azure portal, you go to portal.azure.com. Okay, so usually you should have your home page, should be the land page for you. Now, why mine is going to dashboard is because I have my dashboard set. And how do you set your dashboard? There's a button here, that's the settings button. Now, you choose your default view. I can make my default view home, and I can make my default view dashboard. Now, because I made my default view dashboard, that's why my landing page after visiting the portal.azure.com was this dashboard. Now, let's assume I made it home. Okay. Let me go back to portal.azure.com. You will see here my landing page is no longer the dashboard. My landing page is now the home page. Okay, so it depends. You can do that in the settings. Now this is the ribbon where you have the Azure CLI. Okay, we have filter, we have notification. So this notification here, depending on the deployment or configuration you do, you will see that in the notification bell. We have the settings, you have the help, then this is for rating to give feedback. Here is usually for your profile where you can change a directory. If you have more than one directory, you can switch your directory, you can sign out this there. Now your home page, you would get the view of the resources you have done or the resources you're about to use. Now we're talking about virtual machines, and here is a virtual machine. I think I'll show us how to create a virtual machine, and you understand what we meant by you can have your memory, you can have your operating system on the virtual machine. Now, for us to create a virtual machine, because you all are doing it for the first time, okay, you may not see a list of virtual machine in your environment because you do not have anyone yet. So you would see something like a description telling you to create a virtual machine in this space. Okay, now you can equally add, or you click that button, create a virtual machine. Now for you to add, it's going to ask you if you want to start with a preset configuration or you want to start from the scratch. So I'll choose this virtual machine for the benefit of everyone here so that we can all start and learn from scratch. Okay, so it brings me to this view, create a virtual machine. Now, it's important that you have a subscription before you can create a virtual machine. I remember the last time we were together, I showed us how we can create a subscription, how we can have a subscription, Azure subscription. So right now, I believe we all have that subscription. So ensure your subscription is selected, okay, and you need to create a resource group. Remember what we said a resource group was? Okay, so a resource group again is that container, that houses resources. Okay, that's in a simple way, that's a resource group. So we can create a resource group and we can give it a name. So any name whatsoever is fine. But then I will usually advise that you give it a name that you would remember. So let me do textilers um, RG. That's textilers resource group. So I'll go ahead and create. Now it's asking me for my virtual machine name. Okay, I can maintain that conventional style of naming and still give it textilers this time around VM, because what I'm trying to create here is virtual machine. Now remember we talked about regions and we were able to understand that regions is just geographical area, is a geographical area where we have our data center, Microsoft data center. Now here we can choose the region closest to us or closest to where our customer is. We can have, let's say, West Europe. Let me choose under Europe. Okay. I just want to choose a different. This is Europe, UK West. Let me see another one. Europe, France, Europe. Okay, Africa. I think I just prefer Europe. Now here you can choose your region, based on what you want. Like I said, either you're choosing based on where is closest to you, or you're choosing based on where your customer is. So let's assume we are in this region and our customer is probably in the US. So it would be advisable that okay, the essence of creating this VM is, for that purpose, we can choose it based on where they are. We can say, okay, fine, let's choose West area because those will be utilizing the VM more or based on traffic in that region. You can do that. Now we have availability options. Remember we talked about availability zone. I want to believe we remember. We kind of talked about availability set. Now the availability zone is the one I mentioned to us, that where we have physical separate data center that are within the same region, just like the description we have here. So we can choose availability soon or we can have availability set. Now for the availability set, remember we're trying to understand the differences when we're talking about it the last time. We said this availability set is a grouping of our isolating virtual machines from one another. Just like we have described here that it automatically distributes your VM across multiple fault domains. Multiple fault domains. I don't know if I mentioned fault domains the last time we were talking. I don't know if I mentioned that, but in case I did not mention it, now the fault domain is usually within the availability set. So let's take, for example, you have set of fault domain to 3. Let's take, for instance, now we create 3 virtual machines and each of them will be placed in the different fault domains. So what it means is in case there is a failure on one, okay, that is in case VM1 is down, don't forget that we're creating 3 VMs in the same availability set. In case one is down, the other two VM are still available. That's the fault domain. In case one is down, the other are still available for us to use. So that's the essence of default domain. So let's just leave it as availability Z. Now for availability zone, we can choose our availability zone to be 2 1, depending on what you created. We'll leave it as the default 1. Now this image here is actually talking about our operating system. Let me click on see all images so that you can see the list of all uh, images here. So it's basically about the operating system. So it's asking us, do we want to do a Windows server, or want to use Linux, or want to use Ubuntu, or want to use Debian? We have a list of them like that in here. But what we'll be using right now is the VM server. So let's leave it as this VM. Now for the VM server, it has different version, whether I want to use the Server 2019 or Server 2016 or Server 2012, or any of those servers. So I think I would like us to go for um, Windows Server 2016. Okay. So there are various Server 2016 here. You might be wondering which one should I select. Now, depending on what you want to do, you can either choose the generation 1 or generation 2, or the server core service, or even the one that comes with containers. We said we're going to be looking at our containers, so we can do any of that. Now, when you hover your mouse on each of this listing, it will give you the full details of it. So let's go for 2016 data center with containers. Now here is asking us for our spot instance. So we're leaving it as the default, and size. So this size here is basically the configuration. When you have your own desktop or you have your own laptop, it usually has its that's your physical machine. It usually have its own configuration based on the size of the RAM, the size of the storage space, the IOPS, and so on and so forth. So here we can see all those sizes here. So this makes up the configuration. We have, the different family series. Okay, whether it's the D series or the B series, A series, E series. Now, all of these series are, depending on use, what you need them for. It depends on the use. Now, if you're not if you don't have any, we can maintain the B series. Now if you notice here, the B series, based on the configuration, is going to give us a 2 CPU, 8 gig RAM, 4 data disk, 1920 max IOPS, 16 gig temporary storage. Premium disk is supported, and for $60, about $60 per month. So this is something that we can purchase. Now, based on our money, I'm sure we cannot go for the DS3 V2 series, because if you look at the DS series, they are quite on the high side, and I'm sure our subscription that we got, we only have $150 thereabout that is being given to us. Okay, so it would be advisable that we stay within range. Okay, I'm sure you may be asking, like, Tosin, can't we go for DS2 V2? Yes, we can. We can equally go for that, but I'll just like us to be in between, such that we have, because right now what I'm considering is the configuration. Okay, the fact that it gives us a 16 gigabyte temp storage, we have 1920 max IOPS, 4 data disks, 8 gig RAM, and 2 CPU. I think it will suffice for what we'll be using it for. So we can go for the B2MS series. Now you can see a description here of all the series we have. It's letting us know that the D series, this is usually the latest generation D family, and is recommended for general purpose, which we can use. Now the B series is ideal for workload that do not need continuous full CPU performance, just like this lab that we'll be doing, or that we are demonstrating right now. So we can maintain the B series. Now for the A series, is best suited for entry-level workload, for development or test, which you might be asking, Tosin, why don't we use the A series, since it's for general purpose and this. But why I'm not using it is that the premium disc is not supported. Okay, that's the reason why I didn't bother taking us through the A series. But for you to understand all the series is why I'm going through all this. Okay, so we equally have the E series as well, which is the latest generation E family, and it's for high memory needs. The F series, you have two times, double the performance boost for vector processing workload. The H series are usually for high performance compute VM. And if I, select, you would see um, the one we have and look at the pricing. You can see it's on the high side. Definitely gives us like 700 gigabyte time storage. The max IOPS is about 2,000, 4 times 500, 2,000. We have 4 data disk, 352 gig RAM. That's high, 44 CPU. So that's really high, and the pricing is also high too. Okay, so you have the L series, which is high throughput, low latency, directly mapped to NVMe storage. If you look at the pricing for each of these things, you would observe that they are quite, and these are monthly. Okay, these are monthly, um, you know, pricing. We also have the D series, the third generation D family for general purpose. We have EC. So if you look at from your hand, don't forget that we're trying to explore at the same time. So you would see all of this. So we are maintaining the B2MS series and we select. Now username. Now this username is what you'll be using to log in to your VM at every point in time. So I usually recommend that you maintain the same virtual machine name for your VM name. That way, it's easy to remember. It's same virtual machine name. Now your password. So Azure has its own password policy, which means it has to be a minimum of 8 character, uppercase, lowercase, alphanumeric, all those combination. That's what you need to use. So I'm going to go ahead to set my password. If you're following, you may have to, utilize the alphanumeric symbol, uppercase, lowercase for, you can mix those. So once I set it, it takes us to the inbound path. Remember, so 1 minute, let me take us back to the slide. Remember, the slide is letting us understand that the VM, it has virtual processor, memory, storage, and networking. So obviously, you can see that even from the configuration that we're trying to put in place. We're able to see the disk size for processing. Now we are going to the networking phase. Now the networking phase, this is basically about the network security group, letting us know which ports do we want to allow. So we have various ports here. We have the HTTP, HTTPS, SSH, and RDP. This secure shell, if you are using Linux, you can open the port for a secure shell. And this is remote desktop. So we are opening the port for the remote desktop, but it's fine if you want to open all these ports, it's okay. Okay, to just let you know that this will allow the IP address to access virtual machine, and these are the means in which you can connect to your virtual machine. So yes, we are going to allow ports, and yes, we can select all this inbound. Now for licensing, in a situation whereby you have existing licensing like organization does, probably they have a reserve instance or capacity that has been purchased, they can select this, for that. But because we do not have licensing, we can move on. Now let's check out other tabs. So the OS disk side, remember I said it supports premium SSD. So we have the standard HDD at this drive, we have the standard SSD, and we have the premium SSD. Now the hard disk drive and this solid state drive, one will give us more storage over speed, and the SSD will give us speed over storage. So we are going for this premium SSD, which is in between. Now in case we have you know want to create a new disk or want to attach an existing disk, we can do that here. But because we are creating this afresh, there may be no need for that. So let's move on to networking. Now for networking, remember from the basic, we had created some things. So it will give us, it's create for us a subnet. It's create for us a public IP address. We would have the NIC for the network security group. The default is basic. We have our public inbound port based on what we have selected when we were doing the basic configuration. And we have load balancing. In case we will be using a load balancing, okay, we have it here. And what's this load balancing? So basically, we can have load balancing um, as a back end pool to distribute traffic. So the main essence of that is to help distribute traffic. That's what the load balancing does. It helps us to, distribute traffic. So, like I said, the what's it called? The inbound ports. We also have that. I think I've mentioned the inbound port to us. I think we'll still see more of that. Let's just go ahead and create. So next year is management. Next year is management. For management, we'll leave it as the default setting, but here, enable auto shutdown. Let me just talk a little bit about that. For this auto shutdown, okay, is letting us know the virtual machine once we create will be up and running. The virtual machine will be up and running. So at every point in time, such that we can manage costs. Okay, we can set a shutdown time such that it can stop and deallocate, and it will not incur more cost on us. So we can set that timing to say, okay, at the end of the day, I think let it shut down by, let's take for instance 12 p.m. Let's use, our own time zone is UTC +1, or we can use the West African time WAT. Let me see if I can find that here. But if we cannot find that, so basically this is, okay, so this is it here, West Central Africa. We are +1. Okay, so we can either request for a notification before shutdown, or we can even uncheck like, okay, you don't have to notify me, just go ahead based on my setting, go ahead to shut down. Now, in case we want to enable site recovery, okay, we can go ahead to select that for site recovery. No, but right now we are still in the beginning phase, so we can leave every other thing as default. Okay, I'm not going to bore us with so many things since we are just starting afresh. I won't do too much deep dive. So let's go advanced here. Okay, in case we want to have a script, maybe we want to have a script to start or shut down the VM, we can have a script here. We can use this. We can have a VM generation. We can change from generation 2 to say, okay, we want to use generation 1. We can just have that in place. We can make changes in here. Next here is tags. So in case we want to be using tags, okay, these tags allow us to, tag our resources. They allow us to label our resources. That's another good word I can use. Okay, it allows us to, properly label our resources. We call them resource tag. It will help you to organize them by categories. It's, of course, it will consist of name and a value. So it helps you to, properly organize things in different categories. So organizations are usually, encouraged or recommended to use these taggings, to use the resource tags. So next here we'll go ahead to review and create. So the configuration we have set so far is to check if the validation pass. If the validation failed, that means we have done something that is incorrect and we may need to view what you have configured or what we're about to configure properly. But once the validation passed, it means we can go ahead to create our VM and everything is fine. So once I click create, it should tell us our deployment is in progress. So to initialize deployment, this is telling us from the notification bell or notification icon, can call it that way, and it should go ahead to deploy. Okay, so while it's deploying, you can take note of the activity. To tell you deployment is in progress, it will tell you those things. It will list out, the different things that will be deployed for storage, for networking. We would see all that listed there once it is completed. So consider here IP, network security group, a virtual network. All of those will be listed here. So we can see that. Now for IP addressing, maybe I can just talk about that a little bit. Now, of course, one can assign IP address to Azure resource, and the essence of it is to be for communication. For communication and probably your Azure resources with the internet. That's the essence of this IP address that is being created. It's still deployment on the way, but I just want to talk about some of these things as it is deploying. We also have network security group, just like what we can see here. We've talked about IP. Network security group is the NSG. Now, this network security group usually consists a list of security rules, whether it's inbound rules or outbound rules, where we can deny or allow traffic. Okay, that's the essence of the network security group, and it's usually associated with our subnet and our network interface. That's what it works with. Then what's this subnet that I was talking about? The subnet, helps us to restrict traffic flow to machine that resides in, within our subnet. So we can have a zero subnet, or we can have it associated with our network security group. The network interface, remember we said network security group work with the subnet and network interface. This network interface, what it does is it allows traffic to flow through the NIC, and it's usually controlled by the network security group based on the rules that is being set, whether it is inbound rule or outbound rule. Okay, now this deployment is still in progress. I think we would move on, and when we come back, we would check. I don't know if anyone has a question um, before I move on, because I know I've said a lot of things, and I really don't want to overwhelm us with information. I don't want to give information overload. I would like to carry us along. So I don't know if we have any question whatsoever. Please, uh, you can raise your hand or you can put it in the meeting chat. Okay, Tosin, your connection is breaking up, or is it from my end? Um, Please, is everyone able to hear me properly?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yes, I
thank
can
you.
hear you now.
All right, thank you for the response. Chama, probably you may need to, leave and rejoin again if the issue still persists. Probably you can leave the meeting, then you join back to check if you're still experiencing this breakup. Thank you. Ladies, please, any question before I move on? Don't worry, the deployment is still in progress. I'll bring up the result. For those of us that are trying while I was doing this, has anyone's deployment completed? Or maybe I should ask, was there anyone trying, while I was doing the same thing?
Yes, but it's still saying deployment in progress.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you for the feedback. So we would keep monitoring, but because of our time, since we just have 2 hours, let's move on. So here, walk through, create a virtual machine, connect to the virtual machine, install web server role, and test. So of course, we would try to do this walkthrough, which is what we've started. Once it completes, we'll continue. So again, any question, please, before we have not ended. It's just to take
Um,
question and
I want
continue.
to like ask a question concerning like that $60. Has it been like deducted from your account?
No, not yet. It's at the end of the month. It's just giving you a costing, like a pricing. This is how much the particular disk size that you're selecting would cost you. So what
Okay.
did you observe? You observed your money is still intact, right?
Yes.
You just, purchase this, so to say. So it's your usage over time. That will be your billing at the end of the month. So it's giving you a pricing overview. So it should charge you like, if you saw the validation when it was testing for validation, it gave us a particular price per hour, 0.08 something something dollar. So you see that at the end of the month is what will accumulate to the price. So it's giving us an idea of the costing. Okay, so let's check our configuration again. So my here says completed. So let's go to resource. And of course, it takes us to our VM that we've created. You would see that automatically created a public IP address for us. We also have a private IP address that was automatically created. We have our virtual network automatically created. Now for DNS name, we can configure it. It's optional. It's not compulsory. We can configure it. So when we click here, so we can give it label. So I can say, okay, but it's case sensitive. It has to all be in lowercase. So let me just put textilers. So once it pass, then so our assignment static and all, so can just save. Now, what does this do? Your VM, rather than giving you an IP address, it gives this DNS name label rather than the IP address. So now that it's saved, we can go back to our overview. Okay. All right. So you see that the DNS name, which was telling us not configured, is now actually configured. So here we have all, the different things that we can run the settings. So we have the networking. In case we want to check the networking for this VM, we can do so here. Now this is the inbound port that we created, so to allow traffic. Here we have the connect. In case we want to RDP to the VM, we have the Windows Admin Center view we can install. Just taking a look at the settings in case you want to modify changes, you can do so here. The way we selected B2MS for deployment, we can change it. We can say, okay, this size, I want to whether downsize the VM. This 60 is too much. Let's take, for instance, I want to downsize it to B1S or DS1V2 series. No, just because I believe what I need it for does not require this much. I know you can equally do so from the size. You have the security in here. So this is us just exploring. We have Azure, the advisor. Advisor that's it usually does kind of recommendation, but we don't have any recommendation here yet. Extensions, continuous delivery, availability and scaling. If we want to have instances, scaling instance, configuration, identity. We just have all those operations we can do. We can monitor. Okay, we can monitor our VM. We have various things. So everything with regards to our VM we just created in my case, textilers, we can do so here. So right now, let's connect to the VM. Let me show us how to connect to the VM. So We'll use RDP as the remote desktop. So if we are all here, let it download the RDP file. Okay, so once the download is completed, we can open so that we connect. So it gives us something like this, like you can see on the screen. Click connect. Now it gives us this interface. Okay, so what's our username and password? Remember I told us to use the same virtual machine name as our username. That's me just recommending to us, since we are doing this, for the first time here, and it's easy, or it's easier to remember. So I can have tech stylers vn. That's my virtual machine name. Then I'll go ahead with password. So it gives me this notification, and I click yes. So once I click yes, it's going to connect to my VM, and this is what my VM looks like. 1 minute. So you should have this. Now the DNS that we configure, rather than stating IP address here, it will give us the DNS that we configured. So you can see this is just like our physical computer. Okay. Although we created server here, so it's not just server we can create client too, the likes of our regular Windows 10 client. We can create anyone. This is just we having a lab demo for ourselves. So here this should be my internet, obviously. Okay, but I don't know if we have any question before we move on, please. So we've created a VM, and we can see how to connect to the VM. Now installing the web server rule test, I think I'll take it slow. We would equally do it, but I'd like to, take things slow, one after the other. I'll come back and do this. So let's take a look at app service. Or ladies, any question, please? Or do you need me to wait a little based on what you're doing from your hand? Or can I move on, please? Hello?
I think you can on.
All right, thank you very much for that. So let's talk about app service.
I think you can move on.
All right, thank you very much. So for app service, like I said, it's PaaS. The VM we just created is under AES infrastructure as a service. Now the app service is a PaaS offering. Okay, we can build, deploy, scale web apps, and APIs quickly. We can work with any of the frameworks. So we have different framework, the likes of ASP.NET. We have the Java, Ruby, Node.js. So this offers us with multiple, you know, multiple languages. That's the app service. It gives us multiple languages. We can do DevOps optimization with these app services. We can, do global scale with the iServices. We can have our security and compliance. We can have our Visual Studio integration. We can even have our serverless code with these, app services. Now, let me talk a little more about app service, before we create an app service. So when it comes to app service, it has its own plans. There's something called app service plans. Now, this app service plans is what allows you to run, to define a set of compute resources of a web app. That's what the app service plan does. So once we have the app service plan, it will define our region where want it to define the number of VM instances That's the app service, and it will also give us room to, for the size of our VM instance. Also, we have different pricing tiers for this app service. Probably what I should do is let me bring this up. We have concluded with the VM, and yes, we have created a VM, which is this environment. So you have this. So on your own, you can create this same VM, but this time around, instead of server, remember what I selected was server 2016. Instead of server, you can do client. What do I mean by client? A regular Windows 10, Windows 8.1 if you wish. So those are client machine, not server machine. So we can do that on our own to practice. I'm going to leave us to do that on our own. But don't forget, when you create, it's going to incur cost on you, and you can even delete immediately. If For testing purpose, you can create a client. I'm giving us as a task, and we can delete immediately after this creation. So we are done with VM. I want to walk us through that of app service. Okay, so let's take a look at apps. For app service, you can come here on the search resource and services to type app services, and you would see app service, app service plan, app service environment, app service domain, app service certificate, and all. But what we want to look at is app service. Now, for you, you may not have anything listed here. I had created one already, so that's why you're seeing one list. But for us, you will see something like create app service, or you can come to add, just like we saw when we wanted to create a VM. So let me click add. So again, we are going to configure it. Don't forget, if you do not have a subscription, you may not be able to create. So our subscription we have here, then resource group. So what I would encourage us to do, because we have already created a resource group when we're creating VM, we can maintain that same resource group, textiles resource group. Okay, rather than creating a new one. So what this means is all our resources will be within the same resource group. Remember when we created the resource group, it's associated with a particular region. So all our resource group, or all our resources rather, will be in the same resource group. Now let's give the web app a name. Again, I would recommend maintain the same name. And so since the convention text stylers, then maybe this time web app. So can maintain it this way. Now here we have um, the publish, whether we want code or Docker container. So for this we can leave it as code. But what's Docker? What's Docker? We may just want to have like an idea. Now this Docker is basically a tool that usually makes it easier for us to create, deploy and run what's it called, application by using containers. Don't forget that we're still going to look at what this container instance and container is. So if you're using Docker container, it makes it very easier. So what it means is it will allow developer. Don't forget that we said PaaS is focused towards developers. They are the one that utilizes more. So it will allow this developer to have the package of the application with all the things they need in it. When I say all the things, the likes of the libraries, the dependencies, they just have them in place. So it's more or less a tool. So if we say publish and want to use code, it is fine. If we say Docker, that means it's that tool that gives us like a full package option. Okay. Now the runtime stack is just talking about the frameworks, whether we want to run it .NET or want to run Java or Node or PHP or Python, Ruby. These are just various frameworks and languages. Okay, so that's what it has there. So You can say here, let's choose .NET. Now our operating system is Windows, so we can either have Linux or Windows operating system. So we leave it as Windows. Okay, so again, region, we can select the same region. This is saying our web app, what region? So we can say, okay, let's choose SGS, as our region. And now the app service plan, which I basically wanted to talk about. Okay, so for app service plan, this has to do with I've talked about app service plan. I said it helps us to define the set of compute, our region, the VM instance, and the size of this instance. Okay, and we also have something called the app service plan pricing tiers. That's basically on our SKU, here. So we can change the size. Let me show us. So we have all of this. So if you go to dev and test, we can have the free. Now this free here, this F1 is basically free. So what it means is the free here, when we create labs, it does not come with SLA. There's no SLA. It's going to provide us with 1 gig memory, 16 minutes per day compute, and of course it is free. Okay, and it does not provide us with our service level of agreement because it is free. Now we have D1. Now this D1 here is part of the shared, tier. So don't forget that everything in here, all the SKU here is just within the dev and test, if that's what we're doing. Now notice something here, that you can have 1 gig RAM, 240 minutes per day compute. The pricing is not free. It will cost you like 949 USD. Now the other features that comes with this is custom domain. So which means you have memory, you have storage, and you have custom domain. Now let's take a look at B1, which is still part of shared, like our basic. So this basic, what it does is it provides us with lower traffic requirement. We don't need to advance an auto scale. And the basic here would give us custom domain. You can have your SSL certificate. You can manually scale instances up to 3 instances. You have the Azure Compute Unit. You have memory. You have storage of about 10 gig. That's quite on the high side, like higher than the D1. So what this means, when you say you're scaling up, this is basically an example of scaling up when you increase resources. So let's assume I'm on F1 before. Maybe I've selected F1, my app service plan is F1, that is just free, and the only thing that I get is 10 gigabytes of what's it called, of memory. And I'm looking at, okay, I think 10 is what I need. I can scale up to B1, which will give me about 10 gigabytes storage and memory. So that's an example of scale up. Now you can scale down to say, okay, this is too much. The pricing is 31 USD and I'm not utilizing all of the resources. I want to come down a little. Now that's scale down. Don't worry, we'll see what it means to scale in and scale out, even from this app service. Now let's take a look at production. Now production, you have options. You have that of the standard, you have that of premium. Now for standard, this plan is usually for running our production workload. The pricing is based on the size and the number of instances that we run. Okay, that's for this. So the standard plan would usually include an auto scale for us, wherein we can scale number of instances. If you look at this point, you have you can see the features here. There are more compared to the dev and test, what's it called, tab. The dev test tab is the one we have our free, shared, and basic. But for production, we basically have for standard and premium. The S here is talking about standard, and P1, P2, and all the rest is talking about premium. Now take a look at the features you would have for yourself. You have the custom domain, which means you can include a custom domain. You have the SSL certificate, which means you can do certificate binding. You can have up to 10 instances for your scaling. So when you're scaling out, you can scale out up to 10 instances. You have staging slots that you can use. We can call it, we call it deployment slots. Okay, we can have this slots, that helps us to host the same app service instance and can be swapped. So which means we can use it to configure and we can swap it at every point in time that we need to. We have backup. So this allows you to do backup. This allows you to do traffic. So you can have traffic manager using this standard. And of course you have the memory, and if you take a look at the storage, you have up to 50 gigabyte storage, so which means you have more resources, you have more features. Okay, let's take a look at the premium. So the premium, you notice you have same features, but the sizes. Take a look at this deployment slot. You have up to 20 staging slots. Your instance, you can scale out up to 20 instances. Okay. Your backup app service 50 times daily. That's when that daily backup occurs, and you have 250 gigabytes disk storage. So you're having more. I'm sure if you look at P2, but don't forget, the more you scale up, the more the pricing. So you can even have a view of the pricing here. This cost about 82.22 USD, 161.17 USD, 82.41, and so on and so forth. So let's take a look at the last one, which is isolated. Now for this isolated, uh, it's basically which means you're not sharing. So the isolated here is designed to run critical workloads, things that are required to run in a virtual network. So the isolated plan, what it does is it will allow you to run your app in a private and dedicated environment. That's why the word isolated come into place. You have your private dedicated environment of the data center. So you'll be using a particular set of series, like a dedicated VM that gives you a fast processor, that gives you a bigger storage, that gives you're just getting something like a premium. I don't want to use the word premium, like a VIP. Yeah, let me, if I can borrow that word. It gives you that VIP, treatment, if I can use that word. Like the isolated, you can scale up to 100 instances. Okay, for isolated. Okay, you can scale up to 100 instances. Say you have that here. Your storage, this one has left the level of gig. You're not talking about terabytes. It just gives you, that dedicated environment, that private dedicated environment where you can run your workloads, your critical workloads, that you have. And if you take a look at the pricing per month, they are basically on the high side. So what are we going to maintain? Let's maintain standard and apply. Okay. So once we do that, we can look at the deployment, just one after the other. Do we want to have a continuous deployment? If we want to have a continuous deployment, we can enable. But what do we even mean by this continuous deployment? That is, what Microsoft, or what should I say, what Azure does is it provides us this continuous integration and deployment with Azure DevOps or GitHub or Bitbucket, all this repository, it provides us with that, such that it will connect our web app with any of this repository that I just mentioned, whether we want to use the likes of GitHub, whether I want to use the likes of Bitbucket, or want to make use of Azure DevOps. So if we enable it, we are basically saying we want to use those repository. Well, no, for the benefit of this, we are not enabling. Don't forget that we are just starting from the scratch. So taking us through, that route is like me going deep dive and jumping. So I wouldn't want anyone confused, because I still want you all to come back next week I don't want a situation where I be like, oh my God, what person is saying, I don't think it's for me and I don't want to continue. Please, it is for you. It's just giving us setting our expectation, giving us an idea of what this Azure is about, of what we can do with this Azure, and it can even open our mind to the path we want to take. Whether we want to take the path of ES, or want to take the path of PaaS, or want to take the path of, software as a service. You understand? So this, please, I don't need anyone to be scared. You can do it, and it's simple to know. Okay, and that's why I would as much as possible maintain this basic flow, because of the audience that we have here. I won't go too advanced so that no one is confused. So in the meantime, we understand what deployment is, that it gives us this continuous integration to utilize repository like GitHub, like Bitbucket, but we are not using it. So let's go to next. Now, the next here is talking about monitoring. So we can monitor service. So probably with the use of application insights. So this application insight, yes, is one of the Azure Monitor, is a feature on Azure for our Azure Monitor. And basically they monitor the performance of our application. You know, they help us to collect, analyze. It also act as maybe a telemetry, for us just to view. When we say the word monitoring, that is, we are able to view. So this application insight will collect all the, necessary data and provide us with live metrics, such that we can see, and we can even use that metrics to configure, how we want things to be in our environment. So let's leave it enabled, because yes, it's nice that we can monitor. So let's talk about tagging. Now I've talked about tagging the first time, that helps you to organize your resources. Okay. So far so good. We've not been using tagging, but I think when you need to know how to use tagging, I would, put that in place. Don't forget that this training still continues for a while. This is still our third meeting for this training. So then let's review and create. Now it's checking the validation. It's going to check the validation. If the validation passes, then we are good to go. So it's going to give us the summary. Okay, this is the estimated pricing per month. This is the subscription we have. We are maintaining the same resource group. This is the name. This is our code. We are using the, our runtime is .NET. It just gives us all this summary of what we have configured so far, and we can.
Sorry, question.
Please go ahead.
The operating system you chose, is it your type of PC? Or we're just going to use Windows, even if we're using Linux?
Okay, so we have various operating system. We have, the Windows operating system. We have Linux operating system. Windows is different from Linux. So if you're using Windows operating system, that's the operating system provided to you by Microsoft and all. For Linux, that's probably provided to you by Red Hat or, Ubuntu. So it's just various operating system. Okay, and of course, if we can even, browse to get more information about this operating system, if we want to, understand it more. Okay, so for Windows that we have selected, we are saying we want to maintain a Windows operating system, Microsoft operating system, rather than Linux operating system. I don't know if I'm able to answer you in a way. Hello?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much.
All right. All right, please. Okay, I think the common
I have a
operating system
question.
being used. You have a concern. Please go ahead.
A question actually. So I was
Oh, okay.
saying, just a follow up to her question. So does it mean that if you have like for example, an organization has they're using Windows, they have when setting it up, it has to be Windows, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't
Or
get
you
that
can
clearly.
decide to use.
I didn't get that
I'm
clearly.
saying, for example, if you're setting up the VMs for
Okay,
of
VM.
an organization. Yes,
Okay.
and the organization, everybody uses Windows. When setting it up, one will need to choose Windows, right?
Okay, so it depends on organization, their business requirements, based on what they're trying to set up. Some organization will tell you, we want to use Linux operating system for this particular, service that we're about to run, and some will be like, okay, based on our requirements, we need Windows, either with their operating system. Now, the Linux operating system, it's been around for a while. Okay, it's just an option and it's not owned by um, Microsoft. So
Mm,
most of the time, people that utilizes DevOps or uses containers and all, they prefer the Windows operating system. Okay, to they prefer the Linux operating system for that purpose. Um, so I think that's what another thing I can say. So it depends on the organization to say, okay, we actually prefer Linux or we prefer Windows. Windows operating system is owned by Microsoft. Linux is owned by another party, but then you can have options. So it depends basically on organization and what they intend doing to say, okay, this is the operating system that we want to use.
okay.
I don't know if you
Okay.
get me.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
All
Actually,
right.
my
The only thing is, please
question
go ahead.
was that let's say I'm using like a Linux computer, like a Linux laptop. I can choose Windows operating system, right?
Okay, yes, yes, absolutely,
That was my
yes.
question,
Oh, I'm
actually.
so sorry. I didn't get that question correctly. Of course, yes. Yes. So if my computer right now, I'm even let's assume I'm using Mac operating system, home by Apple. I can go ahead to have a virtualization or create a VM, but don't forget my VM is cloud. I can create a VM and my VM will give me Windows, such that because I'm using this operating system, I can be able to use Windows. Don't forget that the VM is like um, a computer sitting on your computer. I don't know if that makes sense to us. We have a computer and we can have another image on that computer. Although that's more of virtualization, but VM is more of cloud because it doesn't matter the computer you're logging with. As long as there's a computer, you're able to access the resources over the internet. Yes, you would have access to your VM. So you can come to my place tomorrow and you remember, oh, I need to work. You can make use of my computer despite the fact that it's not yours. Connect to your own VM that has all your resources, that has all your files, that has all your things, and you have work, you get your work done. Okay, that's the essence of cloud. Accessibility via the internet, anywhere. And this VM is your own computer, simulating a physical computer, but right now on the cloud. So yes, to answer your question, if you are using a different operating system, you can have another operating system as an image. It's called virtualization. Yes. Is that clear, please?
Yes, thank you
Uh,
so much.
yes,
All right,
thank
let me
you.
go ahead. Let's create. For those of us that are following, I'm sure it's the question and answer has given us time to catch up. So I'm going to create. So it's going to give us, if you take note of the notification here, to give us the status, like it's deploying, it's doing this, and that. I don't know if we still have any question before I continue. So again, it's to do deployment in progress. So walk through, create a web using a Docker image and test web app and all. So this one are going to be our own task. So what I will do to us is at the end of this meeting, I will help us with, if you don't get it today, you will definitely get it before the end of the week. So I'm going to help us with a guide that would instruct us on how to create these things. So what I'm doing currently in the class is to demonstrate to us to see that, okay, this is how we can create. This is the environment where we will create. But the task itself, I will give us a guide so that we can have our own hands-on experience. We can follow through. It will be, very easy to follow, and we'll be able to do that. So if you don't get it before the end of today, you will get it maybe tomorrow Sunday or latest Monday. Is that fine, please? I'm thinking if we have to do this in class, then what will be your take home? I don't know if you get. So the lab guide, I'll put it in our channel. It's going to be maybe a Word document. You will see the steps, like go to Azure portal, click on this, select this. It will be very descriptive, and that way we can have our own hands-on experience. And maybe in our next class, I could make us share our screen just to view, what we've done so far. Is that fine? Do you think it's something that is workable? Or you want us to do
Yes,
it?
yes.
Because I'm thinking if we do it right here in class, then we may not have things to do on our own. So what we do right now in class is to demonstrate, okay, and we would see how these things are created. Then we can do the testing, on our own, or we can also have other things to do. So the next one here is container services. Container services. And for container services, Azure Container, like is written here on the screen. It said it's a lightweight virtualized environment that does not require operating system and can respond to changes on demand. So we have the Azure Container instance and we have the Kubernetes. Okay. Can someone read what we have on the screen to us, please? Then I'll explain so that way we are both, interacting. I won't be the only one talking. So anybody, please, if you don't mind, you could help
Okay.
me read out. Thank you.
From Azure containers are lightweight, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Azure Container Services. Azure containers are a lightweight, virtualized environment that does not require operating system management and can respond to changes on demand. Azure Container Instances, a PaaS offering that runs a container in Azure without the need to manage a virtual machine or additional services. Azure Kubernetes Services, an orchestration service for containers with distributed architectures and large volumes of containers.
All right, thank you very much for helping us read. Now, when we talk about this container instance, there is something that Azure is providing to its customers, and they are available both on using Linux or Windows-based container. Now, these containers, um, they are usually they are run without managed servers. Okay, you don't need a server. It gives us this solution for a scenario where we can have and operate like an isolated container without orchestration. Kubernetes gives us more of orchestration. Okay, now this is Azure Container Instance. Let me find a simple word. I could say, okay, it gives us like the fastest and simplest way to run, a container in Azure. We know what a container is. It's a lightweight virtualized environment. It does not require operating system management. We know that. Now we're not saying the container instance is like the fastest way, to run this Azure container. I don't know if that makes sense to us. So it helps us to deploy. It helps us to manage cloud applications. It gives us that simple way, to run our container in Azure, whereby we don't have to start thinking of managing, any of these services on our own. Okay, so we're going to also deploy a container instance, and we'll do the test. So let me also show us how to deploy that. But in the meantime, let's see if what we're initially deploying is completed. So you have here your deployment is completed. This is for web apps. Okay, so I'm sorry, please, I'm taking two things at a time. I hope you understand what I'm doing and I'm not confusing us. So usually when deployment is in progress, we go to the next topic. Then we try to review the deployment that is in progress to see if it has completed. So for instance, this web app is completed. And this is the overview of our web app. It's telling us that currently it is running. It's located in the East US. This is a URL. We can configure L check if we want to, and these are the activity logs based on what we've done. So far, so good. We
I
can
have a
give
question.
access control. You said what?
I have a
Hello?
question. Hmm.
Oh, please go
So
ahead.
for this web app, for the web app that we set up, I'm trying to liken it to, say, um, I'm assuming that it means, for example, an organization have an application they want to um, um, like load up on the virtual machine. So how would that work? Would it be that say the developer will bring their code, or what exactly would the developer bring? And then um, the Azure expert would need to load onto the web app part of it. For I understand the part where you need to choose the kind of framework, if it's Node or .NET. But then what does the developer bring that you need to put up on this place for you to know that okay, your web app is successfully running on the Azure service?
Okay. So now this is a URL. Let me show you something. So this is our web app, and it gives us like this, URL browser setting. But then it's letting us know we don't have our code yet. Of course, we just created it. Now, for the developers coming in, what they need to do is to go ahead to create their code such that at the end of the day, this URL is not going to bring this default page. Okay, it's going to bring that code they've run. Remember that part where we're saying, should we choose a Docker container or should we choose a code? Now, the part where we chose code, we selected .NET, framework. So we can go ahead based on the language that we want to use. So say, okay, it's Java. I want to code things in Java. Or I want to code using Node.js, or I want to code using Python. Now, depending on the language you want to run, okay, you must have selected that during that configuration we did initially. And at the end of this, so in case you're trying to build a website or you're trying to build an application for your organization to do, you would do that, and this is like your part. Okay, let's say something. So it brings us, this is just a documentation and all for this is navigating about for the code for what's it called? 1 minute. For the code, we go ahead to we can bring in our code in here and run our code here. So at the end of the day, that URL is not going to be showing this default. That one is just showing us a default page. But then we can go ahead, to, have our code, in place. We can bring in our code. So this is where the developer does, all their work based on the language, or probably they already have, or they want to use the Docker wherein they connect with GitHub repository or Bitbucket and all. So you can bring in your source code here. So maybe you already had the code somewhere that you've created. You just want to bring it into Azure. You can do that by selecting, okay, I have it in my OneDrive or in my OneBook, or maybe it's in, GitHub. I don't know if you're getting me, please. So in
Yes, I
here
understand what you're
is
saying.
what you're doing. So yes, organization can use this web app to deploy their codes or to execute their code, and this can even be integrated with Azure Active Directory, for users in the organization to use. I don't know if you're getting. Let me 1 minute. Let me show something. I don't want to go deep dive so that I don't, totally digress, but permit me to just show us something, please. Okay, so let me show you something from Azure Active Directory. Let's assume we have completely created our code web app. we have an application that is built and all, we can actually integrate that with our Azure Active Directory. Okay, in here. So I'm just showing us so that we can integrate it in here so that that code, we can make it available for users in our organization to utilize. I don't know. I'm trying to look for simple words that I'm not going to take us out of this context.
Yeah, I
Um,
understand what
I will
you have
be
explained. I understand you. The part where you showed where the developer can maybe search if it's on OneDrive or GitHub. That was what I wanted to understand. Thank you.
oh, okay, please. All right, thank you as well. So in here, that's for the and thanks for that question too. So it helps us to, see things further. Okay, so here we have configuration for the web app we've created in case we want to change a particular configuration, we want to see the configuration that is in place. Authentication, how we want users to be, identified. Saying this, we have here, we can add identity provider, if you want to add authentication to that web app. Then we have, identity. If you want to turn on identity to say, okay, let's use access control based on who can access this web app and all. You can have your backup in case you want to back up this what's it called, web app using snapshot. You can configure the backup. You can have custom domain. Remember that URL I showed us? Let me see. um okay, 1 minute, I want to go back to this URL. So this URL, we can customize it. So it won't be carrying webapps.azurewebsite.net. We can customize it to, based on what we want. So that when you are providing it to user, it won't be textilerweber.azurewebsite. It will be your own unique, so we can customize our custom domain and apply, certificate in case you're trying to build a website or you're trying to build a web application and all. I don't know if you understand. So we can have the certificate whether I want to use SSL or TLS binding. We have networking, for traffic. Probably want to put a firewall or access restriction, or want to have an IP connection endpoint. We can do so in networking. Now we can scale up plan. Remember when I selected standard, so I can scale up to either, premium, or scale up to isolated, or even scale down to any of these free or shared service. Now also I can scale out. Scale out has to do with instances. So here my instance count is 1. So I can say let's do a custom scaling to say, okay, um my minimum is 1. I want to have a maximum of 3. So which means I can scale out up to 3 instances. Okay, in here. And once I have my custom skill sets, I can save. So which means at any point in time when there is more traffic on, let it scale out, my CPU up to 3 instances. Okay, so to tell me my scale up is successfully done. So I can have web jobs, which talk about, I don't want to buzz with too many things, but this web jobs gives us room to add, you know, you know, Chrome's and all of it, like a shadow, for our web job, like background process. We can have push, we can have MySQL, we can put locks to prevent accidental deletes. We can have the app service plan, view the monitoring. See here, letting us know those things we've done so far and all. We can see metrics. This is still under monitoring our app service. So we can set metrics to say, okay, let's set metrics for our CPU percentage. Let's use, okay, average percent. For this, we can, do that. We can set metrics. But then we can have our logs, you know, if we want to put logs, we have diagnostics. We can do automation. We have, in case we want to raise support if we have issues with our web apps. So that's with regards web apps. So basically, what we want to look at now is actually what's it called? Container instance. Okay, so 1 minute. So for container instance, see everything. Sorry, don't mind my spelling, but it will give you an idea. So we have container instance here, so we can click. So because I do not have one here, it will show you create container instance. So we can add. So usually what I do is after I create it, I delete it. So even the app service, I might go ahead and delete it because it will incur cost. But I could leave it in the meantime if we'll be needing it next week. So because of money, most of the time when I create all of these things, I go ahead to delete after I am done. Okay, so the same method we can go ahead to create a container instance. So
Sorry for saying apologies. So
that's
I
fine.
want to ask, do you
Go
delete
ahead.
immediately or you wait for about weeks before you delete?
So it depends based on what I'm doing. So sometimes I could, for instance, I'm using it for lab. In your case, I could delete it later tonight. I could delete it tomorrow because these things are cost effective. They will incur cost, and before you know it, my dollars of my money is gone. So depending, but if I see that okay, what I'm creating is something I'll still use beyond today, okay, then I leave it running. I'll just monitor and see how I can make it cost effective. I don't know if you understand, please. I'll make it,
Yeah.
something like, okay, I can manage the cost and it will not incur too much cost, on me. So
Okay.
that's basically um what I go ahead to do. But in a situation where I'm just using it for lab or demo, this is not the only app service, sorry, Azure subscription or account I have. I have other ones that I could be like, okay, I can leave it in those ones because those are my lab environment for doing things and monitoring things or having stuff. But for this one that I'm just doing demo at the end of the day, maybe later tonight, I can go ahead and delete. Okay, but that's after I've achieved my initial intention of creating this. Do you understand? So let's go ahead to create. So resource group, please, let's still maintain, instead of creating new, let's still maintain our initial resource group. And we can give this a name. So I'll still maintain the flow, text, stylers, container. So take note of something here. It's letting me know that I'm not following, the rules. So it must contain only lower cases. So I have to do that appropriately. Else, it's going to give me an error. It's possible my validation might not pass for it to create. So I have to do it properly. So it is case sensitive. So I'll go text stylers container. You can see compared to the first way I've written it. So my region, think West US, like I've always been using. So my image source again, do I want to use a Azure Container Registry or do I want to use a Docker Hub or so based on what it wants me to do, I would select appropriately. So I could go ahead to choose my image up to be Docker Hub. No, the image for my image type, let's leave it as public. For the image here, if not specified, Docker Hub will use for container the latest version. So here we can leave it, let it automatically create for us. Now the OS type here again. So based on this, we can say, okay, fine. We want to use Linux. Let's even use Linux. No, we've been saying Windows all the while. Let's even leave it as Linux. No, they are just operating system, whether I want to use for operating. And the purpose of this, okay, is a container instance. Okay, let's leave it as Linux. Size, we can, equally change the size, or we can leave it as this default. So we can say, okay, the number of CPU, it will give you the range, like just within 1 to 4. The memory, it's just specify to us, but so we can leave this as default as well. Okay, don't forget this is a container, not VM. No, so let's check the networking. Okay, so for the networking, we can have a DNS name label. So we can say textile. Don't forget, you can give it any name though. You can give it any name. I'm just using textile as, since that's what's bringing us together. No. So for our ports, we can, okay, choosing the port 80 TCP. That's fine. That's basically what we need. It's just that if we delete it, we may have to choose, do we want to use TCP or UDP? This default is fine, port 80 TCP. That's the protocol that we want to use. It's fine. Okay. Let's go to next. Okay, so next here is the advanced setting. We are not making changes, but here is letting us know that the only policy it has here is if there is a failure, let it restart only when there is failure. This one, if you want it to restart at all times, you put it as always. If you do not want it to restart at all, you take it to never. But then let's leave it as the default policy. We are not making changes here. And our tags, I know we've not been tagging. We'll get to a point whereby I'll just tell us about tags, and you know how you can do your tags. You just basically having it a label such that it is well organized, and you know that okay, you're tagging this to this department or to this organization. So basically organization utilize it every time, so that because organization will have so many resources deployed, so many resources that is being used, and tagging is the only way they can manage to have a flow of what they are doing. They can know what resources for what and for what purpose. It gives them a proper labeling, and it helps them to just organize resources properly. Okay, so I know we've not been doing that because we don't have much, but we still show us how to do tagging. So we can go ahead to review and create. Okay, so good. Sometimes it's good we get an error. Here is letting us know validation failed. I'm glad we had an error. So that sometimes when you have an error, you can know how things are. So it's letting us know that our error was based on basic, like there was something that we did not do. So here we are expected to still, we shouldn't leave it empty. We should specify maybe a URI or a Docker or tag, without. So let's just take this default that is being put here. Let me see if I can copy and paste it. So ideally we should have our image in place or no. Let me see if okay, so now let's recreate and see. You see the validation is passed. So ladies, when you get an error, let's not panic. We can always trace it back to see where our issue is, and we correct that issue and we try. Okay, most of the time I'm always happy when we get errors or when I get errors, because it gives me room to explore more and to find out what the issue is, troubleshoot further. It basically helps troubleshooting skills. So sometimes or most times I like it when error shows up and you're able to tackle it. Next time you know what the error means and you know how you can go about it, and also improves your troubleshooting skills. So go ahead and create, and here we have our container instance created. So again, it's going to do deployment in progress and all. So let's move through. So Windows Virtual Desktop. This is quite like the latest, like new, in Azure, and is actually a desktop and app virtualization that runs in the cloud, wherein you're able to create full desktop virtualization environment without having to run additional gateway servers. You can publish unlimited host pool to accommodate diverse workload. It helps to reduce cost with pooled multi-session resources. So that's WVD, and yes, that's we can also create. Because of our time, please permit me to move, at a faster pace while our container instance is deploying. Please permit me to do so. Now let's take a look at networking. Networking, this is a part in Azure that you cannot escape. It's always visible because it helps it take care of communication to the internet. And also let's take a look at um, uh, networking phase. Again, I think I would like someone to please read for us so that I won't be the only one talking. Then I'll explain each of them, and we'll move on. Another person, anyone? Any volunteer, please?
Azure Networking Services. Azure Virtual Network enables Azure resources to communicate with each other, the internet and on-premises network. Virtual Private Network Gateway (VPN) is used to send encrypted traffic between an Azure virtual network and an on-premises location over the public internet. Azure Express Route extends on-premises network into Azure over a private connection that is facilitated by a connectivity provider.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's start from virtual network. That word, all the things you've read, what it just means in a simple language that you and I can, basically understand is like it's representing your network in the cloud. The same network that is being configured on premises, those networking that is being done, on the on-premises side and everything. Now, this is the representation of it. Our VNet is the representation of, our own network in the cloud. Okay, so here it will enable resources to communicate with each other, the internet, the on-premises network, just like it is stated in here. We can even use it to provision something called virtual private network, VPN. Okay, in Azure we can use this VNet to provision that, or we can even have it with our on-premises infrastructure whereby maybe we want to create an hybrid environment, like an hybrid solution where we have on-premises talking to the cloud, probably because we're operating in hybrid mode. Yes, you can have your VNet do that for us. And this VNet, I wouldn't be going deep dive, but then we can use it in so many ways. We can use it to create like a dedicated private cloud VNet for ourselves to get work done. So probably in a situation whereby we do not require to use a cross premises configuration for our use, we can create this VNet. We can even use VNet to extend our on-premises data center, to the cloud. Yes, we can use VNet for that, and we can even use it to for hybrid scenarios. So those are, the situation whereby we can use this VNet. When you extend it, that's where you have there's something called point to site to site. I don't know if it's something that we can still look at from there. I don't know if any of you have had this experience that probably you're working from home. I don't know. I know some of us are students. I know some of us are working, whereby you're currently working from home and you need to access your organization's resources. Now, because you're working from home, basically you'll be using your own network, your modem, your internet, based on your ISP. You'll be using that, but you're not basically maybe on your organization's net because you're not on your organization's network. Sometimes some organization will provide you with this VPN connection so that you use the VPN to route be on the organization's network before you can access some resources. I don't know if you understand me. So it's just trying to say, okay, these are the use, of this networking services. That's the VPN in this instance. I've talked about VPN. Send traffic from virtual networks and on-premises location over public internet. So that's a typical example. Now for express routes. Now this express route usually it will extend just like said it will extend the network on premises to the cloud. That's the simple word. It will let you extend it from on premises. Now the essence of express route or why organization or people use express route is because the connection is usually very fast, is very reliable. So they also use this express route in a situation whereby um, you want to do maybe recovery or you want to do backup, or you're working with your private cloud storage and all, you can use express route. But basically, you use that to extend your connection from on-premises infrastructure data center, on-premises infrastructure to the cloud. And like I said, it is fast. That's just like the word express routes. Yes, it is fast. So we're supposed to create a virtual network, create two virtual machines and test the connection of this virtual network. So once we do that, we look at Azure storage. So I think I'll just append this so that we can conclude this slide because it's almost, we have just 10 minutes more. So let's take a look at storage, Azure storage. Let me see how many slide we have more. Okay, I think we still have about 6 or thereabouts. Okay, so please, if you don't mind, permit me to just flow through. So let's talk about Azure Storage Service. We have this container storage, disk storage, Azure files. Can someone else also read what we have here, please?
Okay, let me go.
Thank you.
Container storage blob is optimized for storing massive amounts of unstructured data, such as text or binary data. Disk storage provides disks for virtual machines, applications, and other services to access and use. Azure Files sets up a highly available network file shares that can be accessed by using the standard server message block (SMB) protocol.
All right, thank you very much for reading that out. Now, container storage. So when we say it's in a simple way, it's just for storing, something very big, that are unstructured, the likes of our streaming video, the likes of our images, the likes of maybe document directly to browser, things that are not structured, those are the things we use this container storage for, which we refer to as blob. Okay, those are the things we use container storage for. We also have disk storage. Remember when we're creating VM, this disk storage comes with VM that you can specify size, that you store resources. So just like here, we provide disks for virtual machines and applications. So this disk storage comes with VM. Remember when we created web app, here in this class, the demonstration, there's like a memory and disk storage. So they come together for that use. And we have Azure files as well. Now for Azure files, basically it's enabled us to set up just like we have here, high available files that can be accessed by using standard server message block SMB protocol. So what that means is our VM can share the same files with both read and write access. We can also have the file shared. So we can have a scenario whereby on-premises application, we can use it to share file, wherein this Azure file share, it makes it easier maybe to migrate application that are from on-premises to the cloud, or we share resources from on-premises to the cloud without much workload in it. Besides that, we can also use this Azure file share, probably, let me see, and we store, okay, we can actually configure files that can store, file shares from multiple VMs as well. Okay, besides us sharing from an on-premises on-premises to the cloud, we can also have from, different VM they can share between VMs. So these are the Azure storage that we have. Okay, here I think there's a lab. I don't know if there's a lab. So let's take a look at tiers. So we have something called, access tiers. So this access tiers, I think the best way I can describe that is to us is to let us know that there are options. There are different options for accessing our data. Okay, so just like we can see on the screen, the alt tier is for those things that we frequently access. If we access maybe our data or files from time to time, is being specified in this alt tier because we utilize it often. We check, we access the data in it often. So most of the time, is cost effective. It's more expensive because we access things here often. Now for cool here is for is things that we don't access every time. Maybe we just access one off, we can have it in this particular access tier called cool. So just like we have on the screen, it says it's optimized for storing data that are infrequently accessed and stored for at least 30 days. So which means you don't access it all the time, no, just one off within 30 days, once 30 days or thereabout. It's not something you access regularly. So that way it can be in your cool tier. Now for archive is those is what's it called, those data that we do not access all of the time. Okay, is rarely accessed, just like what is stated on the screen. Okay, with flexible latency requirement. So I can let us know that there's something called lifecycle management. I just want to mention there's something called lifecycle management. What that means is based on utilization, if your data is not being accessed for a very long time, okay, maybe you're accessing it every time, it's in hot access tier, and after a while you occasionally access it, maybe very infrequent, it can switch, the tier can switch at any time to cool, because it's now that you can now say that, okay, it's something that is not being accessed, at every point in time. Now, if it's something that's, in the last 3 months or thereabout, it has not been used, it can be in archive. So the life cycle here helps, to, it defines, like, is more or less like a policy. Okay, I don't know if it's more or less like a policy whereby your data it defines a custom policy. Let me just put it that way. So you can have this lifecycle management to say, in my environment, this data that is being stored, if it's being accessed often, let it remain in hot in a tier. And at every point that you, so it's like a rule that is not being accessed, let him move to cool tier or let him move to archive. So you can have that kind of life cycle management. We usually refer to it as Azure Blob Storage Lifecycle Management. So yes, you can have it that way. You know, is a policy. As a policy. So you specify that for this particular story, let it be kept in hot tier, and when it's not in use, like it's infrequently accessed, let it move to cold storage for the next, can specify, and we can archive it to say, okay, we want to archive for the next 5 years or 3 years because it's not something we access all the time, but we still need it. Okay, I know. So yes, that's with regards to Azure Storage Access Tier. I don't know if anyone has question. It also has its own lab, which I know is almost time. So any question, please? Wow. Any question? It's almost 12. Okay, so maybe I should ask us this question. How do you think we can effectively make use of our time? Because the truth is, going forward, we are advancing. Okay, we are advancing in our training. We would need time for hands-on. We would need time, to also discuss or take some of this lecture. So I need us to give us an idea. Do you think what we should do going forward is maybe a particular week we'll just do the talking, then the following week we'll know it's strictly lab, or we can use this style of, okay, we'll talk, we'll demonstrate, then I can give us a lab guide to try things on our own. Please, I need suggestion because it's 12 o'clock already, which means we are, okay, sorry, I think I'm seeing a post, but please, I need suggestion, please, before we call it a day.
For me, I actually like this way of explaining and then going through to the lab. So I don't know about others, but I like this method.
Oh, okay. I don't know
Um,
if, and go ahead, please.
I think this method is okay, and if we don't understand anything, we can as well rewatch on YouTube.
No, all right, fine. Why I'm asking this question is because if you compare today's training to our first training, you realize that first training we didn't have to do labs, so we're able to run things smoothly by just explaining. But going forward, we would have lab session, we'll have demonstration that we need to do, and so on and so forth. So our 2 hours in essence might not be enough. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm asking. But if you say this method is fine, then we'll continue this way such that um, next week we'll continue from where we stop and we'll move that way. But like I said, I'm going to share us a document that will contain steps on how we can do some of these things. So even when you're watching the video and you want to try things on your own, you can refer to this document. It will serve as a guide for you at any point in time. And by the time you're strong on your own or stronger than those in which, of course, it's very possible tomorrow it might be you taking the training tomorrow for textilers, which I'm not afraid to call on anyone once you get the understanding. Chama, you want to say something? Please go ahead, Chama.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I don't know, my network has been horrible today. So I just wanted to bring to your notice my for the container that we created. Mine came up, the deployment came up as failed.
Okay, that's fine.
Hello,
That's fine. That's not a problem. So what we
the
can do
deployment
is,
came up as failed. I don't know why.
yes, yes, it's okay. So we can troubleshoot, and what that means is we can retrace our step back. So retrace the step back, do redeploy. It will take you back to basic to check all those things you configured. So it's possible that, remember, it's my own validation also failed. So I was able to retrace it back. Now that the deployment has failed, you can retrace it back. Click on redeploy because there's a room where you can click redeploy. It will take us back to check those configurations that we have set. Then it will probably point out, where the mistake is. Is this something you can try? Hello?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's giving
Okay.
me that, it's telling me that the image that we actually selected, that textiler cannot access it, the textiler container cannot access it. That's the option, that's
Which,
like the error message is bringing up.
do you want to share your screen?
Hi Tosin, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm asking if
Mm.
you want to share your screen for us to see. Hello, Chama.
Okay, please let me do that.
All
Okay,
right, that's fine. Okay, Oriami, sorry, please. I see that you have a question here. I would also take, I'm just saying that actually. It says here, Chama, please go
okay.
ahead.
Can you see my
I
screen
just want
now?
to, not yet.
Hello?
Okay, good. So, um, okay, fine. So click on redeploy. Close this error where you have error. Click on redeploy.
I've already clicked on the redeploy.
Yeah, it's still going through.
Uh,
So it should take us back to this, setting. So here we are going to look at it again. So this is the subscription. Please select the resource group.
hello?
I'm here. Select the resource group
Okay.
that you have. Okay. Um, the container name is fine. Here is fine. Scroll down. Please scroll down.
Tosin. Okay,
I
okay.
can hear you. Please scroll down. Okay. So DNS label is fine. Okay. I think the image name. So that image name, let me see an image name that you can use. 1 minute. Let me put it in the meeting chat. I'm coming, please.
Okay, okay.
You can try this image name. I put it in the meeting chat, please. Please copy and paste or type it out. Now, once you do that, do review and create. Can you see that in the meeting chat, please? Okay, so someone is putting here is that the first method is okay, but time consuming. But I'll go for second option. We can come back to the following.
So I should go ahead and create it, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm trying to read questions in meeting chat because our time is spent already. It's already 12, and the truth is that I do not want to extend you
Okay,
know,
okay, it's okay.
time. All right. So Oyem, please let me take your question and we are done today. We'll continue from next week. And like you suggested, I'll make sure I'm always on course, please. Okay, he says here, Lotus, I'm sorry, but I'm unable to speak because of where I am is noisy. I need clarity on how to purchase computing or networking or storage service as a cloud infrastructure personnel. Let's assume company wants to set up web apps, website, and I'm told to get Azure pricing for budgets. Once this is sorted out, how would they purchase? Okay, so for pricing, Oriyomi, if you can hear me, you can use the Azure calculator to check pricing. Okay, so if you want to get web apps or VMs or network or whatever, you can use your Azure calculator. I think I showed us last, I don't know, our last training. So once you check the Azure calculator, it gives you an estimate, like an idea of, okay, how much you'll be purchasing. Then you can come to the portal to purchase this same way that we have been showing you, that we have been demonstrating. So when we say purchase, it's basically, setting up this. If it's a web app, if it's storage, that means you're going to set up the storage and deploy it. That's what it's called purchase. I don't know if that answers your question. So if organization is telling you to get pricing for budget, use Azure calculator. Okay, if they are fine with the pricing, to say, okay, yes, this pricing is good, we can go with it, and they want you to get it, basically they are telling you, let's deploy it. So you need your subscription, and with your subscription you'll be able to purchase. So that purchasing actually has to do with you deploying them. Once you deploy, you have purchased. I don't know if that's clear, please. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. And apologies for taking extra 10 minutes of your time. I am really sorry. Okay. I will try as much as possible to be time conscious. We'll let our 10 to 12 be 10 to 12. We won't exceed it by any minute going forward. Once again, I apologize. Thank you for your time. See you all next week. Thank you all.